kunja bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava kunja bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira vanachari. Yamunatira vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava kunja bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava kunja bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava kunja bihari. हरिनाम संकीर्तन की। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। श्री श्री निताय गौरचंद्र भगवान की। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरे। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवती उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकी नंदनाय च नंदगोपकुमाराय गोविंदाय नमो नमः। Hare Krishna. So we are reading from first canto, 10th chapter, that is departure of Lord Kṛṣṇa for Dvārakā, text number 33. atha dūrāgatān śauriḥ kauravān virahāturān sannivartya dṛḍhaṁ snigdhān prāyāt sva-nagarīṁ priyaiḥ atha dūrāgatān śauriḥ kauravān virahāturān sannivartya dṛḍhaṁ snigdhān prāyāt sva-nagarīṁ priyaiḥ atha dūrāgatān śauriḥ kauravān virahāturān sannivartya dṛḍhaṁ snigdhān prāyāt sva-nagarīṁ priyaiḥ atha dūrāgatān śauriḥ kauravān virahāturān sannivartya dṛḍhaṁ snigdhān prāyāt sva-nagarīṁ priyaiḥ atha dūrāgatān śauriḥ kauravān virahāturān sannivartya dṛḍhaṁ snigdhān prāyāt sva-nagarīṁ priyaiḥ. Word to word meaning. Atha, thus, dṛḍhaṁ, having accompanied him for a long distance. śauriḥ, Lord Kṛṣṇa. kauravān, the Pāṇḍavas. virahāturān, overwhelmed by a sense of separation. sannivartya, politely persuaded. dṛḍhaṁ, determined. snigdhān, full of affection. prāyāt, proceeded. sva-nagarīṁ, towards his own city, Dvārakā. priyaiḥ, with dear companions. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. Out of profound affection for Lord Kṛṣṇa, the Pāṇḍavas who were of the Kuru dynasty accompanied him a considerable distance to see him off. They were overwhelmed with the thought of future separation. The Lord, however, persuaded them to return home, and he proceeded towards Dvārakā with his dear companions. Purport is not there, so we'll go to next verse. Read the translation and the purport. O Shaunaka, the Lord then proceeded towards Kuru Jangala, Panchala, Shurasena, the land on the bank of the river Yamuna, Brahmavarta, Kurukshetra, Matsya, Sarasvata, the province of the desert and the land of scanty water. After crossing these provinces, he gradually reached the Sauvira and Avira provinces, and then west of these reached Dvārakā at last. Purport. The provinces passed over by the Lord in those days were named differently from those of today, but the direction given is sufficient to indicate that he traveled through Delhi, Punjab, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Saurashtra and Gujarat, and at last reached his home province at Dvārakā. We do not gain any profit simply by researching the analogous provinces of those days up to now. But it appears that the desert of Rajasthan and the provinces of scanty water like Madhya Pradesh were present even 5,000 years ago. The theory of soil experts that the desert developed in recent years is not supported by the statements of the Bhagavatam. We may leave the matter for expert geologists to research because the changing universe has different phases of geological development. We are satisfied that the Lord has now reached his own province, Dvārakā from the Kuru provinces. Kurukshetra continues to exist since the Vedic age, and it is sheer foolishness when interpreters ignore or deny the existence of Kurukshetra. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Shri Utapadakamlam Sri Gurun Vaishnabhamsha Sri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamsha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravaani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratushe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhesha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we are reading from first canto, 10 chapter, 33 verse, 33, 34 and 35. So here, first of all, I'd like to seek blessings of all the Vaishnavas so that I can speak something in parampara for the pleasure of Vaishnavas and for the glorification of Lord. Hare Krishna. So here we see in this purport, Prabhupada is speaking about having faith in the Vedic scriptures like Bhagavatam and Itihasas and basically Puranas. So we see sometimes scientists, dry philosophers and logicians, they don't have faith. They consider all the text given in Ramayana, Mahabharata and Bhagavatam, it is just a myth and it is some kind of history. So, but we see Prabhupada always stressed on having firm faith in parampara and Guru Parampara, our Acharyas and Vedic scriptures also. But sometimes we see in our case, we lack that faith, right? For example, sometimes in Diksha ceremony, Yajna. So after Diksha ceremony, we have Yajna. So we are supposed to perform some Yajna. And in that, the priest devotee comes. Priest devotee means he's our normal Pujari devotee only. And then we feel that, and then he starts Yajna, and then we feel that some different mantras should be there in Yajna. And basically he starts with same mantras. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Namah Vishnupadaya. And then we feel, these are our normal, regular mantras. And I know these mantras. What is new about it? But suppose somebody is reciting some Purush Sukta prayers or some prayers from Vedas, or suppose some South Indian Brahmanas or some Vedic Brahmanas, they come and then they recite prayers. Then that time we feel, some tangible things are happening. So this is called Yajna. So sometimes we lack this kind of faith. So that's why Chaitanya Charan Prabhu says, we secretly disbelieve sometimes some text from Vedas or text from our Itihasas and Puranas. But that faith is very much required. And sometimes if we quote from Chaitanya Charitamrita or Brahma Samhita, and then people feel, these verses we know, CC and Brahma Samhita, we know. We should quote something from Upanishads and some Vedas like that. And sometimes scholars, they say that this Brahma Samhita is just a monopoly of ISKCON. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has written it. Sometimes people say like that. But it is not the case. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he was traveling through South India, he actually found it. Right? In Adikeshwar temple, he found that Brahma Samhita. And it contains a lot of references that how Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we also see sometimes some of the Vedic scholars, they condemn Prabhupada when Prabhupada uses the word Vedic literature in his purport. They say why Prabhupada is using Vedic literature words. Because he's just commenting on Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. And he's not even touching Vedas. But Prabhupada used to defeat them very easily. He used to say, see, if you consider only Shrutis are important and Smritis are not important. Shrutis are the text like 4 Vedas and Upanishads, that is Shrutis. And Smritis are like Puranas, Itihasas, Ramayana, Mahabharata. So sometimes people say we should quote from Shrutis and not from Smritis. But then Prabhupada used to refute. Prabhupada used to say that even like great acharyas like Madhvacharya and even Shankaracharya, he commented on Bhagavad Gita. So if we consider Bhagavad Gita as a Smriti text, then why Shankaracharya is coming and he's writing his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, right? And even Madhvacharya, he wrote his commentary on Vedanta Sutra. That time he quoted Bhavishya Puran, right? So he was also giving reference in Vedanta Sutra from different Puranas. And not only that, even Chandogya Upanishad, it has a reference which says that all Itihasas, Puranas, Mahabharat, they are called fifth Vedas. So they are also part of Shrutis. So both texts are very important for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, like Shrutis and Smritis. So many times scholars, when they come together, they try to put date to Vedas, right? So in one of the conference, so many logicians and philosophers and scholars, they had gathered, and they were discussing how old Vedas are, right? So somebody was telling Vedas are 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old. And one person, he gave argument that Vedas are minimum 2.5 years old, 2,500 years old. Why? Because everyone accepts Buddha. And everyone knows that Buddha came and he rejected Vedas. Right? So as a fact that he rejected Vedas means Vedas were there. So he was telling that at least 2,500 years back Vedas were there. But then at the end the conclusion came that some people were telling, they were telling that Vedas are like even million years old. Some were telling billion years old. And then at the end they concluded Vedas are like very old. They are like billion years old. And Prabhupada defeated that very easily. He said, can you put date to Vedas? Can you put a date to knowledge? Because Vedas means what? Vedas means wisdom. Vedas means knowledge. So can you put a date to knowledge? Can you put a date to wisdom? So this simple argument is sufficient, right? So Prabhupada told that Vedas are from the beginning of the creation. Vedas are eternal. Just like knowledge and wisdom is eternal, Vedas are also eternal. But people, Indians started losing faith on Vedas because of foreign invaders. Right? We see in device 3 that how foreign invaders, they came to India and they understood that the whole foundation of Indian culture is based on Vedas. And they understood that everything, the whole text is in Sanskrit. So in the beginning, they thought that we will also convert our Bible into Sanskrit. So they convert completely Bible into Sanskrit, and they presented that Bible to Brahmanas, but Brahmanas were not impressed by that. So then they were thinking what to do now, because they wanted to convert, right? They wanted to rule whole world and they wanted to make everyone as a Christian. So then they thought that we will study all the Vedas and then we'll convert all Vedas into English language. But as they started studying Vedas, they understood that Vedas are really vast and Vedas are very rich in knowledge. They also appreciated. Even many foreign invaders, when they came to India to study Vedic literatures, they were like very much impressed. In the beginning, so many businessmen used to come and they used to take a lot of like some very precious jewels from India, and they used to go to their country and they used to gift. But later, even many philosophers and scholars came and they used to copy. And whatever Vedic text we have, they used to copy and they used to make a copy and they used to give it as a gift to their friends and relatives in their countries. So they understood that Vedas are very vast and it contains a lot of rich knowledge. So then they got the idea that we cannot divert Indians' faith from Vedic text. But then slowly they started misinterpreting Vedas, and they started telling that this Vedas contains a lot of myth, and it is just a book of different stories and rituals, and it is kind of some kind of fanatics. So they started misinterpreting Vedas, and they started diverting Indians' faith from Vedic text to English text. So they were telling that English education, English culture is better than Vedic culture. And then slowly people started moving their faith. And even we see, and that's why after we see there are so many British schools and colleges are there. Even Prabhupada was studying in one of the British college, right? So, but when these kinds of foreign invaders, when they came, and even some dry philosophers and logicians, when they study Vedas, so they study with their material mind and material intelligence. So Prabhupada used to give this Kupa Manduka Nyaya, right? So there was one well, and in that well there was one frog. That frog was living, and then he was considering that this well is everything, right? This well is the greatest well, and I am supposed to live here, and this is my kingdom. But one day what happened? Another frog, different kind of species, he came from ocean, and he went inside that lake, and that the frog one, he asked, "Who are you, and where are you coming from?" Then he said, "I am also one kind of frog." And he was looking something different, but he said that I am also a kind of frog, and I'm coming from ocean. Ocean is like very vast body, very vast water body. And then that first frog, he said, but that ocean must not be very big than my well, right? Then he said, no, 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 ocean is very big. And then the first frog, he said, how much big? Then he started inflating his own body. He said, this much big? Then the second frog, he said, no. Then he again increased size of his body, and he said, this much big? He said, no. He was like constantly inflating his body, and at one point of time, it was completely burst. It was exploded just like a balloon, and that frog died. Right? So Prabhupada used to give this story, Kupa Manduk Nyaya, that people think that I can understand Vedas, I can understand Vedic scriptures with my own mind and intelligence and with my senses. But actually we need blessings, we need kripa. After some time we'll see how Vedic understanding is given to a devotee or disciple. So it is a fact. So Vedas are not a myth, it is actually a fact, and it is not just a fairy tales, or it is not just kind of stories, but it is actually history, right? He story. Vedas contains stories about he. He means Lord, right? So it is not only some kind of fairy tales or stories, but it is a proper history. So that's why we see, suppose even if we consider Vedas are like fairy tales and stories, but who are the people who generally take interest in some kind of cartoons or fairy tales or stories? Basically children, right? So in the beginning they like this kind of fiction, and they like some kinds of fairy tales and stories like Harry Potter, something like that, right? But we see when we grow, right? When people become adult, in their adulthood, do you think that they go back and they watch again cartoons and go back to Harry Potter and watch movies and all these things? No, right? Then how can we think that the sages or the saints who are taking interest in Vedic scripts and Vedic stories, do you think that they are like myths and they are just like a fairy tales? The sages like Valmiki Rishi and Narad Muni, they are at their complete full maturity, and they are able to understand these scriptures, and they are taking part and they are taking interest in such kind of stories. So they are not just like some kind of fairy tales or a myth. So when we see that sometimes Krishna is lifting Govardhan hill, or Hanuman is jumping, recently we celebrated Ram Navami, right? And Hanuman is jumping from India and going to Sri Lanka, right? And he's such a long jump he's taking. And that time we feel that these all stories are like myth. But suppose in some athlete, he's taking long jump. What is the record of highest long jump? It is, I think, 21 feet, something like that. And suppose somebody is breaking that record. Suppose somebody does 21 feet, 0.5 inches. Then immediately we glorify. But when we read such kind of texts from Veda, Mahabharata and Ramayana, that time we don't have faith. And that faith was actually removed because of the foreign invaders. When they came and they misinterpreted the text, and that's why we see there is a lot of faithlessness in the society currently. So one of the devotee, his relatives were in ISRO, right? And they are scientists. So he thought that let me go to them and explain them about science, how science is bogus, and how science is sometimes science tries to cheat, right? And then he went to them, and then he started explaining how science, in the beginning, they tell one thing, and at the end, after some time, after some years, they completely change their theory. And sometimes even to get some result, they cheat. And those scientists, those who are working in ISRO, actually they said, yes, it's very true. We also do sometimes this kind of stuff. And actually they were completely agreeing with that devotee. And then that devotee was very happy. And then he said, okay, then now you accept Vedas. And now you accept Krishna, accept chanting of Hare Krishna, and then chant and surrender to Krishna. But then they said, no, just because science is bogus, we cannot accept Vedas and Krishna, and we cannot surrender to Krishna. So here we see modern people, what is happening with them. They are not able to have faith even in science, and even not in Vedas. So they are completely doomed. And this faithlessness is there in the society. So if you see, there are two things. One is like modern man, and there is a postmodern age. So current age is going on is called as Generation Z. Z generation is going on. Or sometimes it is also called as Gen Z, Z generation. So modern man, what are the symptoms of modern man? Modern man generally he feels that I don't want to follow any rituals, right? I don't want to follow any cultures blindly. Actually, in one sense, it is good. But if we present them scientifically and logically, how Vedas are very important, how rituals are also very important, then they accept. That is one of the characteristic or symptoms of a modern man. And many times they are open. Suppose you are, if you want to, if you can convince me through Bible, okay, I will accept Bible. If you can convince me through Quran, I will accept Quran. If you can convince me through Vedas, I will accept Vedas. So in one sense, they are open. They are not rigid, but they are open. If you are able to convince me, I am ready to take, I am ready to accept Vedic text or rituals or culture. And a modern man is looking for happiness also. Like for example, means they understand that main thing, I'm not looking for some money or I'm not looking for some post and position, but main thing is happiness. So if we are able to convince them logically and with argument and with science that how we can derive happiness, then they will accept it. So that is about modern man. But current age is going on is Generation Z, the postmodern age. So what are the characteristics of this? They like to do whatever they feel means they go by emotions basically. That whatever feels good, that I'll do. So that's why this Nike logo is there, right? Just do it. So whatever you like, you do it. Suppose somebody says that I like smoking. So then I'll smoke. And if you tell them that don't smoke, smoking is very injurious and very bad to health, then they say, hey, don't speak negatively. If you don't like smoking, you don't smoke. But I like smoking, I'll smoke. Right? So that's what. And sometimes people see Sankirtan, even when we do Sankirtan, when we go for Sankirtan, then many times people come and they join and they like that experience, right? So people are happy, people are dancing, people are jumping, but they go by just emotions. So sometimes they attend the Sankirtan and they again go back. They say, okay, you are liking that, so you do it. I don't like, so I'll not do. Sometimes I like to go to nightclubs, so I'll go there and I'll dance there. So that is my emotions, and the leader of even lesbian and gay community in US, what she said? One day she said, I thought that why man should marry a woman. One day I thought man can marry a man. And even woman can marry a woman. So let's do something revolutionary. Right? So they go by their emotions. So sometimes these kind of people are very difficult to preach. So that is postmodern age. That is Generation Z. So basically, who are they? Those who are taken birth from 1997 to 2012. So these are the youths. They are termed as a Generation Z. But scientists, they say that in previous ages, generation used to change after 100 years or after 50 years or after 25 years. But currently, after every 3 years, generation is changing. And they are running out of alphabets, so they are coming back to A plus and something like that. Right? So some more symptoms are there. Generation Z people, they like to work for themselves. And so that's why we see so many startups are coming, right? So they don't want to do job. They want to have something of their own, right? So that's why currently India is on the number 3rd in startups. US is on 1st and China is on 2nd number. And India is catching up. So they want to have their own startup. And that's why we see there are so many YouTube videos also. They are termed as DIY, right? Do it yourself. Don't take help of anyone. Do it yourself. So they want to do things on themselves like that. Second thing is they want meaningful work. Right? They want some kind of mission in their life. They just don't want to put into some kind of system and just follow it. No, they want some meaningful work in their life. And this kind of people were there during Prabhupada's time, right? So the hippie movement, that time, whatever hippie culture was going on in 1960s, that we will be able to see after some time even in India and in Asian countries. So that's why Prabhupada used to engage them very heavily and thoroughly. So that's why we see when Prabhupada was traveling, he was in train, and when Delhi station came, and one of the Prabhupada's friend, he came to meet Prabhupada. And then that time he asked, Prabhupada asked, how about Delhi? can we spread Krishna consciousness here? And then that person said, yes, very much. People are very much interested. So that time Prabhupada immediately told Gurudas Prabhu, get down in Delhi and start doing something, right? And then he asked Prabhupada, what about my wife? Prabhupada told, you can take her and get down and do something. So this is like Prabhupada engaged them thoroughly, right? They wanted to do something. This kind of generation, they want to do something, some meaningful work. Meaningful work should be there. And they want freedom, a lot of freedom. And sometimes they show a lot of overconfidence. Actually, the confidence is not there within, but they try to pose that overconfidence. So that's why it is very important to deal with a lot of respect and a lot of sensitivity with these kinds of people. So when we have proper respect towards their feelings, their emotions, their ego, and when we deal with proper sensitivity, we can give them Krishna consciousness properly. And that's why this kind of Generation Z people, they are very much likely to take Bhakti Yoga. You know, because Bhakti is mainly about engaging a lot of senses and a lot of activities are there. And Bhakti is also about emotions. So that's why many of the US, many top publishers from US, they were actually searching for some Bhakti Swami. You know, they understood that currently this Generation Z is going on, and people go by their emotions. So they understood that people will not take Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. These are not the processes that people will accept. So they were actually looking for some Bhakti Swami who has already lived in Western, who has born and brought up in Western, and who has lived even Eastern culture, like Bhakti culture, and who has practiced like for many years, 20 years, 30 years. And somehow they came across His Holiness Radha Swami Maharaj. And that time, because they understood that this person is born and brought up in US, in Chicago, and he knows the Western culture, he knows the heart of people. And then he has also lived Eastern culture, that is, and not only Eastern culture, but Bhakti Yoga, and he has practiced for many years. So these top US publishers, they approached His Holiness Radha Swami Maharaj, and they told that, can you please write some stories, some Bhakti stories by which you can please try to bring out some emotions from people's heart. And then that time Maharaj wrote some 5-6 articles, some beautiful stories, and then he presented these articles to them. And they said, yes, this is what we want. This is what we are looking for. You write such kind of stories, so it should bring out emotions from people's heart. And then these emotions, when you connect to yoga, then people will get purified. And after that, they told Maharaj to write so many books. And that's why we see so many books are coming, like Journey Home, Journey Within, and so many books are lined up now. So people are looking for these kinds of engagements and these kinds of involvement, so where they can engage their mind, senses, and everything properly. But everything comes back to Vedas, right? So when we come to even Bhakti Yoga, we have scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. And Vedas means how do we understand Vedas and how do we understand scriptures? So it is said, Vedas means first we have to accept authority. And sometimes people say, why should I accept authority? Why should I accept some guru or spiritual master? But even in science, we see we have to accept authority, right? We cannot do research immediately. As soon as we take admission in engineering college or when we do graduation, that time what we are given? We are given reference books. So many books are given, and they tell us that first study this, give exams, and then qualify yourselves. Don't immediately run for research. Then we do graduation, and then we go to post-graduation. There also so many books are given. And then after doing graduation and post-graduation, then sometimes people do PhD, and that time they are allowed to do some research work. But even that research work, there are almost like 3-4 faculties, 3-4 professors are there under whom we are supposed to do research work. So similarly, when even science requires submission, right? Science requires that we have to accept authority, then what to speak of spiritual knowledge? Right? Spiritual knowledge is very subtle. And even there is a scope for research in spiritual life also. But we have to purify our mind, senses, and intelligence first. And then Goswamis, we see Goswamis, they also did a lot of research in Vedic text, right? But that is later stages, right? When we get purified, that time we can do. So that's why this Bhagavad Gita verse is very important. Tadviddi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya ubdekshanti te jnanam jnaninastattva darshina. So there is one beautiful statement by one of the philosopher. He says, where is the wisdom? We have only knowledge. Then he says, where is the knowledge? We have only information. Right? So this generation Z is also known as generation of internet, right? Internet age or information age. So we have a lot of information nowadays. So we have to learn the art of converting that information into knowledge and converting that knowledge into wisdom. So pranipat, so when we do pranipat, when we surrender to Guru, so then what we get is not knowledge. In the beginning we get is the information, right? And when we process that information, because sometimes information is very straightforward, we can understand, but some information is very difficult to understand with logic and arguments. Just like Arjuna is asking in the Bhagavad Gita that Vivaswan, he's like very old, right? He's very senior to you, right? How did you give knowledge to him? So this is like different information is given, but very difficult to process. So he is asking questions. So when we inquire, when we become inquisitive, that time we can convert information into knowledge. Right? And there we should not stop. We should not pause there. We want to convert knowledge into wisdom. So how do we convert knowledge into wisdom? By sevaya. It is said, when we render service to Vaishnavas, when we render service to Guru, that time we convert that knowledge into wisdom. So we see, so recently we heard from Gaurang Prabhu, he was telling very beautiful, what are the characteristics of serving? You know, what are the how we can serve properly Vaishnavas and Gurus. So when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he wanted to go to Vrindavan, right? So he said, this time I'll go alone, because he was fed up when he went to South Indian tour. That time, who was with him? Krishna Dāsa. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told that he was supposed to serve me, but I was serving him. So this time I want to go alone. But then Swarup Damodar and Ramanand Rai, they were telling that, please don't go alone, take somebody with you. Then that time Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he decided, okay, then I'll put one condition, such a condition that they will not find any devotee like this. So he said, I want a devotee who is like very sense-controlled, self-controlled, and very submissive, and very surrendered. And plus, he should be neophyte. Right? He should be very new joining, the PDC devotee, right? Like that he said. Recently, any devotee has joined recently, that devotee I want, very pure, new devotee. But condition, he should be sense control and fully controlled, right? But then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thought that devotees will not find such devotee. But Swarup Damodar got one devotee. Who was he? Balabhadra Bhattacharya. So he said, Swarupaka hey Balabhadra Bhattacharya tomate susnigdha bada pandita sadhu arya. So he said, he's the best person. He can come with you, and he will serve. Why he will serve? Because he has 4 qualities. What are the 4 qualities? He said, first is susnigdha. Susnigdha means he's very affectionate. Right? He has a lot of affection to his spiritual master and even towards you. So he can serve you. So in purport, Prabhupada writes, Srila Sridhar Swami has commented that the word snigdhasya means premavat. One serves not out of a lot of follow-up, but one serves out of premavat. One out of love, one serves. The word premavat indicates that one has great love for his spiritual master. So that is the first thing, susnigdha. Second thing, he told, he's pandit. He's intelligent also, right? And he has a lot of knowledge from scriptures, Vedic scriptures, and everything he knows. So he was quoting one verse from Mahabharata. How do we become learned, or how do we gain maturity? And so there is one verse in Mahabharata which says, when we hear something, that time we get 25% knowledge. Right? That time we get 25% understanding. Then when we see that philosophy in the practice, or somebody is doing that, somebody is following that philosophy, then by seeing we understand 25%, remaining 25%. Then when we teach that knowledge to someone, then we understand again 25%. And remaining 25%, when we are put into a situation, or when we go through experience, that time remaining 25% understanding is given to us. So this is the way how we can get the proper clarity and proper maturity with intelligence. So he said, this is the second thing, Pandit. Third thing, he is sadhu, right? He's very well behaved and sense controlled, as you demanded, right? He's very sense control. And third thing is he's Arya. Arya means the person who is very perfect in his dealings. Right? He's perfect in his interaction. Just like Prabhupada dealt with the parents of His Holiness Giriraj Swami Maharaj, right? So Prabhupada, then the parents of his father of Giriraj Swami Maharaj, he told that your Swami is a very perfect person. He is the perfect organizer and he knows how to deal with the people. So like that. So four things he told. What are the four things? Snigdha, Pandit, Sadhu and Arya. So English terms can be like four eyes. So snigdha means affectionate, intimacy, intimate. And then Pandita means eye, intelligent. Then sadhu means he is well behaved, sense controlled, and that can be considered as integrity. Like, and then last is Arya, means one who is perfect in interaction, I. So four things like intimacy, intelligence, integrity, and interaction. So we see, so how Vedic knowledge is given to us. 7:35. Okay. So we see how Vedic knowledge is given to us. So when we do pranipāt, so when first is surrender, then we get information, then we inquire, then we get knowledge, and when we do service, then we can convert that knowledge into wisdom. So once Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was on the tour of South India, he went to Srirangam, right? And there he saw one Brahmana in Srirangam temple. He was trying to recite Bhagavad Gita. And that time he was also crying and he was showing a lot of ecstatic symptoms. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu approached him and he said, hey, why are you crying? Right? You are not able to read Bhagavad Gita properly also, but why are you crying? So that time he told very important verse that Brahmana is speaking. Vipraka he murka ami shabdhartha na jani shuddha shuddha gita padi guru agyamani. What is he saying? Vipraka he murka ami. I am full. Right? So he's completely, properly following Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also went to Prakashananda Saraswati and that time he told that my guru told me that I am fool, I am murkha. Murkha ami shabdartha na jani. I don't know any translation, I don't understand any Bhagavad Gita. Shuddha ashuddha gita padi. Sometimes I read correct, sometimes I read in incorrect manner, wrong manner. But why I am studying? Why I am reading? Guru agyamani, right? So because my guru has told, that's why I am reading. And that time, Prabhupada writes, this is the perfect example. This is a perfect, good example of a person who had become successful. Right? So how we become successful? Just by following our spiritual master. All Vedic imports. So Prabhupada quotes this very famous verse. Yasya deve para bhaktir tat yatha deve tatha guru tasyete katitaya artha prakashante mahatmana. So many times Prabhupada has quoted this verse. Right? When we surrender to Guru, that time Vedic import will be revealed to us. And that's what scientists and dry philosophers are lacking. Right? They directly jump and they try to screw out the lessons and meanings from Vedas. But that is not possible. Here we see South Indian Brahmana, illiterate South Indian Brahmana. He is not able to read also. Right? He's just holding the book in his hand and trying to read. But all the imports are given to him. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is certifying him. And who is giving Bhakti Shastri certificate? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If he takes ISKCON's Bhakti Shastri, he will never pass. He will fail. But who is giving certificate? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving. What is he telling? Prabhu kahe Gita paate tomare adhikara tumi se jana hai Gitara artha sara. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu told Brahmana, indeed, you are an authority in the reading of Bhagavad Gita. Right? The illiterate Brahmana, he is authority. He is not able to read also. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling that you are authority. Why? Because whatever you know constitutes a real purport of Bhagavad Gita. He had developed that love towards Krishna, and that emotions towards Krishna. And then later, for 4 months, that South Indian Brahmana, he stayed with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually revealed his identity as Krishna to the South Indian Brahmana. So the important thing is when we surrender. Right? When we surrender, when we take shelter of Guru, that time all the knowledge, all the imports will be revealed to us. And one more pastime is there in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, right? He was like very great scholar. But when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to Puri, he was not able to understand. And that time Gopinath Acharya, who was brother-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was chastising. Although you are a scholar, he told, I know, there is no scholar greater than you currently in this world. You are the greatest scholar. But you are not able to understand the identity of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Why? Because you have not received any blessings, any kripa. Right? And that time he quoted this verse, athapi te deva padambujadvaya prasada leshanugrahita evahi. So even if somebody gets even little kripa, and that person then, even if he is not scholar, even philosopher or even scientist, then he can understand Krishna properly. Okay, so we'll end in 2 minutes. So that's why Narottam Das Thakur, he also says there's one verse, beautiful verse. He says, Mahajanera Jai Patha Tate Habe Anurata Puro Apurva Kariya Vichar. So he says that what is the way by which we can understand Vedas and attain proper success in spiritual life? He says we have to follow Mahajanas. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says there are two kinds of Mahajanas. One is Puro and Apurva. Ancient Mahajanas and modern Mahajanas. So he says both Mahajanas are important for us, but the modern Mahajanas, modern sages are very important. The modern Mahajanas are after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they are called ancient Mahajanas. And modern Mahajanas are after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So 6 Goswamis, they were like first GBCs of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? So they came and they gave a lot of essence. They studied everything and they gave so many books. So we are supposed to follow them. And then after that, one more powerful Mahajana came, right? So that is like Prabhupada. Prabhupada came and he wrote all the Goswami's books in English language, right? That is for us. And then Prabhupada taught us that how we are supposed to read, how we are supposed to take shelter. So when we take shelter of Mahajanas, and especially our spiritual master and Prabhupada for us, basically when we live in ISKCON, that time taking shelter of Prabhupada is very important. And taking shelter of Prabhupada means taking shelter of his books, right? So yesterday this our Pankaj Gopuri shared, when Prabhupada writes, he has no ink in his writing, in his pen. You know what he has? He has fire in his ink. He has fire in his pen. And that will destroy all the ignorance of all people. Right? So when we take shelter of Prabhupada's purports, then all the purports will be revealed to us. And this is the way we can understand Vedas, and not by going directly and jumping to Vedas and trying to read some kind of PDF. So many PDFs we can download on Google, and we can have direct access to so many books. But we will not understand unless and until we take shelter of Mahajanas. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki, Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki.